Hello, I'm Todd Phillips, the editor of Canadian Auto Dealer. We're here today with Todd Bourgon, the executive director of the Trillium Automobile Dealers Association. And the association has been working tirelessly behind the scenes, working with other national and provincial associations to try to provide support for dealers. And so, Todd, what's really the latest pain point for dealers now? What are they facing now here at the early days of April?
Well, the most recent change a week ago, or actually it was Saturday at midnight, was sales room floors had to be closed in Ontario. And they have the ability to sell online, and it's been a scramble, to say the least, for a traditional industry to change from selling out of a showroom to selling primarily from their homes off a computer. And there's been some opportunity for some dealers and certainly some stumbling blocks for others, but we've been working hard to try and help them get through some of those. I mean, I think the biggest stumbling block or the biggest challenge that they faced in this transition has been how the banking system is structured in order to sign an actual deal, and the fact that it requires a wet signature, and an online transaction doesn't really allow you to show up with the paperwork at their home and sign the paperwork on the front porch. Unfortunately, our rules and regs don't allow for that. And so that's been the biggest challenge. And so we're very fortunate to have good partners in the CADA, the National Association. Tim and Hugh and their whole gang over there have been working diligently on trying to manage each of these concerns. Banking falls under federal, and in terms of pushing the banks to change their ways and to get the banks to adapt to help us with this. So there's light at the end of every tunnel, as I like to say. And so this week has been, a new challenge, no different than the 5 weeks prior, or the 4 weeks prior to this. But happy to say that we're seeing some movement, and we're seeing some definite partnerships that we've had for a long time that have helped us get to where we're going to get to. But that's definitely the biggest pain point as it stands today. Ask me in an hour from now, it might change, but as of today, that's the biggest pain point.
Well, that's great, and it's issues like this or situations like this may well propel legislators to ease up a bit on the restrictions that have been there in the past, because there's going to be not just in the automotive sector, probably in other industries, a need for that e-signature and to move that e-commerce side along for big ticket purchases. But one of the other issues that you've been working on with dealers is just liquidity. During this, nobody knows how long and how deep this is going to last, but car dealers shuttering their businesses for the public good are really taking a financial setback, as many businesses are. So tell us a bit about sort of trying to arrange some help for them as business owners.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is where you see the strength of a provincial association aligned with a national association. And so, I mean, the three key areas that the national and the provinces have been aligned on are liquidity, helping employees, and then a recovery plan. So from a liquidity point of view, we've certainly been lobbying, as you've seen the many different programs that have come out in the last number of weeks, whether it be tax deferral programs, or they don't have to file for their taxes for, say, an extra 90 days. Certainly the national program that's come out on the 75% wage subsidy was significant. When it first came out at 10%, quite frankly, that wasn't going to cut it. We were just going to see layoffs across the board. So we've been, shoulder to shoulder with the CADA and making sure that we're aligned with what they've been lobbying for, to make the liquidity not just for now. And I think that it's the long term is what we really have to start looking at. So now that they understand, the retailers understand what these programs look like, how they can keep some people working, I think that the biggest challenge now and moving forward is going to be, the long runway ahead in ensuring that there is liquidity, not just for today, but down the road for a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now. So I think that would be the area that I would say that we've spent the most time on. And then the other areas certainly, don't come without regular, everyday sort of challenges to the dealers, whether it be Service Ontario locations that closed. A lot of people don't know that not the majority, but a good portion of the Service Ontario locations are independently owned, and they're independently owned just like a dealership would be. So they have the right, and they had the option in some of the communities to close their doors. They felt that it was necessary based on what they were facing. Which then presented a challenge with putting plates on cars in those smaller communities. So we've certainly been dancing on many different fronts as far as liquidity goes, but certainly the top ones that I named there would be the areas that I think allow the biggest impact, not only to keep people working, but also to help our retailers with a subsidy that will allow them not to have massive layoffs and not to bring people back to work.
Well, that's great. I mean, it's important. Every bit helps, and I think with that regards, I know that you do a lot of work with the supplier community as well. Your association, you hold a variety of events, and
Yeah.
the supplier community has really stepped up during this to offer a host of rebates, discounts, referrals. For those who are interested, we're trying to track as many of those as possible on the Canadian Auto Dealer website and a special COVID-19 page. So if you're looking for who's helping out, we're trying to track that. And anyone who's watching this that is doing something, let us know. We'll pass it along to dealers, because I think dealers are very receptive, and I think they'll remember down the road, hey, these guys were with me during this tough time, right?
You know, I can't say enough for the vendor community. I mean, you and I talked offline yesterday, and I remember 2008 all too fondly. And 2008 was very challenging for our industry. You know, we saw some step up, and we saw, unfortunately, a lot of people not step up. And I think there's a track record now for what expectation is as an industry of a whole, for us to be, down the road as strong as we are. So the vendors have absolutely stepped up, and it's the first time in my career that I've seen not just the vendors step up by giving programs, but so quickly. Within a week, we were seeing vendors provide relief. They knew how serious this was from a global perspective. It wasn't just going to be a quote unquote Ontario issue or a Canada issue. And the other thing that I always like to try and find the positives in everything. The relationships that we've had with the OEMs during this time. And with even just the other provincial associations, it seems that everybody really truly understands how serious this thing is and could have been if we didn't take action, and quite frankly, if the whole community didn't participate. So I can't say enough for those that have stepped up. And for the very few that maybe are still considering it, I'd encourage them to take a look. We need the whole industry to be part of the solution, and not just a select few.
Yeah, it's a very positive message. Hey, one thing as well in terms of silver linings, we were talking earlier too about there's some optimism and some things for dealers to look at. One is really the idea of that we talked about with ride sharing and those programs maybe not being so popular. There could be a chance down the road that personal ownership or personal use of a personal vehicle rather may go up. So there may be sort of some other demand from consumers who are maybe using public transit or maybe using some sort of form of Uber or Lyft or something. They may be, at least for a while, not that keen to do so. So through this, I guess, do you see some positives? Another positive might be also just the adoption of digital retailing that we talked on earlier. So there could be some longer term gains out of this, right?
I have to absolutely believe that, we have to learn from things like this, and we have to adapt from things like this, and we will, and we are, and we do. You've been to pretty much every seminar that we've ever put on, and a lot of our events have been talking about moving our industry more into a digital landscape and addressing consumer needs and consumer demands, so to speak. So I have to believe that this will be one of those points in time where we pivot and we're able to adapt to that. I also have to believe that I actually watched Steve Chipman's interview yesterday, and a few other people you've interviewed, is that we're totally in alignment when we say that we will see a resurgence back in this industry. There's definitely going to be pent-up buying demand. There's going to be incredible programs that come from the OEMs. But I also know, and I think you know too, is that people are going to adjust their lifestyles a bit differently. You're not going to see people as willing to cram themselves into a subway or a bus or other modes of transportation that maybe they were using on a regular basis, which will open up for people to want maybe to commute with a smaller car or even to have a vehicle available versus relying on that. So, yeah, I mean, I saw also some information that came out of DeRozier that is in the same alignment, that history has shown that we will see a surge from this. So we have to look positive, and we also have to look at this as a time where we have some time now where we can change and adapt some of our own internal structures and programs as retailers, so that when that time comes back, that we're ready. And that we can take advantage of it. So we can't look at this as, well, we had 3 or 4 weeks, and let's just get back to the way business always was. It won't be the same for a very long time, if ever.
That's great advice. One last thing I wanted to touch on was, we mentioned the recovery when business gets back to normal. Certainly, the dealerships are going to have to do their own internal transformation. They're going to have to work with the OEMs. But there's going to need to be a larger sort of economic recovery working with the governments. And it sounds like during this transition, the government has been working very closely with business. They seem very agile in adapting programs based on feedback. So through this, I guess, down the road, let's say, when the dealerships are open again, but there's still a big financial lapse, and maybe the market isn't rebounding as quickly. Do you anticipate the TADA and others being active on programs, whether it's a vehicle scrappage program or some other initiative to help, put some life into the industry?
Absolutely. I mean, I think the one that you touched on is a big one. I know that's something that federally that is being pushed is a vehicle scrappage program. That would obviously promote vehicle sales. Certainly, the OEMs are going to play a big role, as will the financial institutions, in terms of what the financial institutions may or may not do with interest rates, what the captives may or may not do with interest rates. But I know just from what I'm hearing and behind the scenes that the OEMs certainly plan to be very aggressive on their programming when this comes back to having showrooms open and the general public demand that comes back with it. So you have to look at this as opportunity, quite frankly. I mean, right now, the sad reality is that the businesses right now they're not focused on profitability for the very first time. A lot of these people that own these organizations, they're in uncharted territory. They're managing to mitigate loss. They're not managing to grow a profit for the particular month. And so these programs will be extremely important to bring that back, because if those businesses aren't profitable, they can't survive, no different than any other company that's out there. So we will be putting all of our efforts to working and supporting our national partners at the CADA, as well as what we do with the province of Ontario, and making sure that the recovery program isn't looked at as 1 month or 1 week. It's going to be a long runway, as I like to call it, and we want to make sure that they don't forget our industry and how important it is both to the national, but also to the province itself as an economic engine.
That's a really good point. I always say one last question, but I always think of one more, so you have to.
That's all right. Ask away. I've got time on my hands.
Okay. Well, one of the things is during this, obviously, there's a need to communicate to dealers like never before. I appreciate you coming on this platform and help communicate to dealers across country. We're going to do our bit during this, but the TADA has also been sending out bulletins as the CADA. There's websites. I get a bulletin from the NCDA out in BC that's a really comprehensive overview. So the associations, your associations, are really communicating to dealers like never before. Tell us a bit about the work that they may not see from your association behind the scenes, just how you guys are all coordinating that outreach.
Yeah, so I mean, we've probably sent out more communication in the last 5 weeks than we have in the last 5 years. We don't like to fill up dealers' inboxes. That's not typically our style, but clearly, as the goalposts get moved each day, we've been trying to stay ahead. We try and take as much information as we can and bring clarity to it. We put on a number of webinars for our dealer members. We also have been sending out a number of different bulletins, whether it be at the very beginning, the biggest confusion was on, how does the EI program work? How does it qualify? How do they qualify? What percentage, do we get back how do we get money back from the government? So we played a role in making sure that information was clarified. We made sure that it was vetted with both legal and also with the province, and then also with OMVIC. That was the 3 key areas, that we wouldn't publish anything out unless we had 3 weigh-ins to make sure that what we were sending out was accurate. And in all cases, not everyone likes to, hear what the truth is, but reality is that we just said we're going to be transparent. We're going to tell people the truth, and it's not about, being gray. I have one dealer that I have a lot of respect for that likes to use the analogy. It's been like drinking water through a fire hose. And so what we've been trying to do is we've been trying to find a way to feed that information back to the dealers through a garden hose, where it's something that they can digest and work with. We can't say enough about our provincial government through all this. We don't fly colored flags as far as alignment to any specific party, but the government's been extremely receptive to the requests that we've had. We played a major role in helping them understand the importance of our industry in making car dealerships in Ontario declared an essential service. And then last week, we were literally on the phone with sectors of government right up until Thursday evening prior to the announcement that the service centers would remain an essential service. So some things in behind the scenes that we played a role in. I can't say enough for my team. I usually don't like to center people out, but I'll certainly center out Frank Note, who is my Director of Government Relations. We put in tireless hours to make sure that the voice is being heard at government, and quite frankly has been an incredible influence in making sure that things like our service centers are open right as they stand today, along with a number of other things that we've been working on with them. So there is a silver lining in all this. I hope that our members see that we've been working hard on their behalf, and I think that we have lots to look forward to. Next February, we can't wait to open the doors to the biggest auto show in Canada. And that show probably can't be better times in terms of when an industry is going to need a resurgence and when the OEMs are going to need their products to be seen. again. So we're like everybody now, hoping that we get through this so we can go back to having some normalcy and not having to send bulletins out every day. But if anyone needs to reach out to us, they can go to our website at info@tada.ca. And my staff are working 15, 16 hours a day. We'll respond to everything as soon as we get it from people. And I want to thank you too, Todd, for the work you guys have been doing on keeping dealers educated, keeping them informed. I'm sure that it would have been easy for you guys just to choose to close up your operations for the 5 weeks because industry is not business as usual. But the role you guys have played, certainly in my eyes, have been a big one and one that's important. So I want to thank you guys for doing what you've been doing as well. Much appreciated.
Well, appreciate that, and I hope we can reconvene. I mean, I wish this crisis was going to be over sooner, but I imagine it's going to last for quite a while, and there'll be more information to share with dealers. So we invite you back on to any time, and we're happy to do a video interview to help get that message out to the community. So thank you.
You're welcome. Be well.
Okay, you too. Signing off.